Right, there we go. Okay, well, as the audience is assembling at the moment, ran over a little bit past 6 o'clock, which, considering the scale of the operation today, I'm not surprised at all. But thank you all for ganneting down your dinner to be with us here again. No doubt people are going to be drifting in throughout. As I say, this is just the preamble before we start the credits, just so that people know, oh, they're starting, whoa, shh, shh, shh. Normally it would be advertising, but this is just me rambling. One little request, please bear in mind, these microphones are actually sensitive all around the place. So if you start chatting at full volume in the front row, we hear you. So, and I also can't hear anyone further back. So do please try to be interested for the full 90 minutes. Okay, we're live and direct, going globally around the world, and we're just sorting out the camera angles and making sure that everyone on stage can be seen from all over the place. Tonight, we find ourselves once more at the park in Telford in Shropshire, where it has been day 2, or at least the full day 2, of the British Constitution Group and UK Column Spring Conference 2015. What's been happening is the morning, and there we go, we know where we're going in a minute, don't we? What has been going on is on the mornings of Saturday and Sunday, we've been talking about election issues in general, and on the afternoons of Saturday and Sunday, we have been looking at the grand jury, the people's grand jury. There are certain jury bits and pieces that we can't reveal to you because of the positive nature of the outcome, which means that we don't want to cause impropriety. Be where the establishment try every trick in the book to suppress the information that we are going to talk to you about tonight. They wouldn't do that, would they? No. Let's find out as we take on another Doomwatch! You might have noticed that our audience really enjoyed last night's show, so the pressure is on tonight to make this Sunday's special edition just as good. Well, we have a full kit and caboodle here, and the audience is gradually filling up after their magnanimous dinner, which we were a little bit late starting, but don't you worry, we're going to catch up very quickly. I'd like to introduce you to the guests that we have this evening, who are going to be talking about the aspect of the conference that has filled the afternoons, which is the People's Grand Jury. There'll be a lot of explanation of that first before we open it up to the audience. But straight away, on my far right here, we have Alex Thompson, who was one of the 4 ushers in the 4 grand juries that we had today. Ladies and gentlemen, Alex Thompson. And next up, who is going to be able to advise us on some judicial shenanigans and craftiness all about no pressure then, on Michael Doherty of Justice Now! And in his own write-up, he says he is living on the front line of lawful rebellion. It's Guy Taylor! And she's been doing the job of being the MC all weekend and most of the night, every night as well. Ladies and gentlemen, Daisy Jones! Now, we did talk about this. Daisy said, don't ask me too many questions. Well, I won't ask you too many questions, but... Because
I've got a headache and I had a little too much fun last night.
Right. Those two particular statements are not linked, but don't worry about it. Okay? Okay. So, I mean, the aspect is, I've missed quite a lot of the day and the proceedings for sort of flitting around here and there and doing other stuff. So, I mean, in terms of your summary of the day, how was it for you? What was the sort of highlights from what you've seen?
Amazing. I'd say people power in action. I'd say over half the room nominated themselves to become jurors, which is amazing. And I think comments came out like, shit, this is real. Yes.
That was SH1T. Yes.
Sorry,
yeah.
yes, sorry.
Yes.
I shouldn't swear at all. But anyway, the point is, yes, I did have someone say to me, "Is it obligatory?" No, it wasn't. But people volunteered themselves anyway because they realised the time is now. The time is now. The time is now, and we need to do something. And yeah, I'm very excited about what. Well, I'm going to be very careful, tread very carefully about what happened. But basically, you know, there's definitely a case for 3 of them.
So we had effectively 4 juries deliberating on 4 different cases. Now, as I say, to make sure that we have no impropriety in revealing the contents of the 3 which were upheld, and we'll explain a little bit more about why that is the case during the evening. But because one of them failed, we can actually talk about the failed one, and also, obviously, the fact that not all 4 were passed, if you like, for further investigation and passing on to the relevant authorities. It means that the one that failed we can actually talk about and use that to explain the process. So that's what we're going to do. And in fact, Alex here was actually, he was the usher in the group where effectively the action failed. Right. So explain to me how that came about and what happened there.
Sure. Just to start off with a technicality, a grand jury, as I understand it, can't fail in the way that a petty jury did. Technically, the jury that I ushered for returned an ignoramus verdict. Now,
and this is a special meaning of ignoramus, isn't it?
So the Latin word ignoramus means we do not know, because in the old days, the writ that the grand jury returned, if they found there was no case to answer, began with the Latin word ignoramus written on the back of the writ. We do not know of any reason why this should be proceeded to petty jury, which is, of course, where you have the higher evidentiary standard. So, in a nutshell, what happened was that after impanelling of our 12 jury members, we had a man leave the jury for good reasons of conscience straight away. Now, that wasn't the spanner in the works. Jurors can do that. In this case, our man recused himself because he said, "I've been talking to Guy Taylor, whose evidence was presented. He was the witness moving for this prosecution." So he quite correctly recused himself and also said that he was mentally exhausted and not able to serve as a juror. Fine. Because the jury was still being sworn in at that point, we were able to ask for another volunteer to be duly empanelled so that we would quorate with a jury of 12. Now, as with the other ushers around the room, once empanelling or swearing in was complete and they had had a chance to read the witness statement, it was time to take them off to a private place where they couldn't be interfered with or anyone else could hear their deliberations. And it was a quarter of an hour after I'd started standing guard on the door of the private place where they were deliberating that one of them came out. And this is where the problem arose, a procedural problem, not an evidential problem. There was no problem that the jury found with the evidence presented by Guy Taylor. And he can go into detail on the evidence if he wants. The procedural problem was that the juror found that there was disagreement among the juries about the evidentiary standard followed. Now, a grand jury in the United States, where they still run them every day, the citizens are well aware of this, or should be. A grand jury has only a 50% evidentiary standard, case to answer or not. There was some disagreement, however, as I understand it. I wasn't party to the deliberations in the room, that wouldn't have been proper. Some disagreement, quite heated, about whether the aim was to find the accused person guilty or not. and what the correct response to that difference of opinion was. So in good conscience, this juror also recused himself by leaving the room, leaving the jury not quorum, because of course English law requires 12 good men and true for a jury. 11 meant that by definition the jury had failed, but unlike a petty jury at a court trial where this would result in a mistrial, all that happens with a grand jury is that the grand jury has de facto, by default, issued a verdict of ignoramus. We do not know at this time why there should be further prosecution. But the rule of double jeopardy doesn't apply. This evidence can be submitted to a grand jury another time, as I understand it.
Right. So basically,
can I just give a round of applause for that explanation?
And I should just actually say...
there's a lab in the house.
Oh!
It's a collie, Daisy.
Oh, is it a collie?
It's
oh,
a
it's
collie.
not a
Your
black
dog's
lab.
right.
It's a collie.
I saw a black lab
What,
earlier.
like Lassie?
It's a collie.
Lassie's come. Is there somebody stuck down a well that we should be doing something about? I don't know. Anyway, we were talking about the mini dictionary yesterday, which is the Idiot's Dictionary Guide to Common Law Words. So it's sold like hotcakes today, so there we go. And here we have ignoramus, the definition from this dictionary. It's a noun, so there we go. A mid-15th century Anglo-French legal term meaning we do not know or not to know, from the word ignorant, and hence the phrase ignorant person. Grand juries often wrote on the back of a bill presented by a party in court either true bill or ignoramus, we do not know. So there we go. Completely different definition of ignoramus to what we expect it to be. So there we go. Ignoramus doesn't mean a bad thing, as you may have immediately thought when you heard Alex say that. Guy, in terms of not actually having the evidence presented to a full jury, bit of a disappointment for you?
Well, no, I think it shows the validity of what we're doing. I mean, first and foremost, the ignoramus situation. I've been writing ignoramus on all the bills that I've been getting for the last 6 years. Yeah, and striking across and putting ignoramus. Yeah, but no.
And do they know? This is the thing when you send them back.
Maybe they're ignorant of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, on the point there is, I mean, it shows that it was a procedural matter.
Yeah.
It was nothing to do evidentiary, as has been said. And no, not disappointed. Actually, happy that we're not. If we were a bunch of Manchester United fans and we're all here to convict a load of Man City fans of being idiots, right? You know, we weren't. Listen, it was done professionally. It was done properly. And you know, amicably.
Yes.
And I mean, and it was done, you know, absolutely to the book. So when I went there with the presentation of my evidence. But one of the guys there was a misunderstanding or a misinterpretation about why they were there, and John had explained all the circumstances about what a grand jury entailed. Someone had interpreted it, I think, differently. Came out with a different answer, and the other guy wasn't happy to be convicting someone of an offence when he was only there to state whether there was a case to answer. And the whole thing of a grand jury is not, is anyone guilty or not guilty? That doesn't apply. Is there a case to answer? And in statute law, they go through the Ghosh test, or you know, and it's called the Ghosh test. Would people of reasonable standards think that there was a case to answer? And unfortunately, one of the parties seemed to think that we were there for something else. One of the other parties wasn't happy with that. It was procedurally defunct, and so the guy stood up and left. And I mean, look, fair play to him. I mean, give him a round of applause for that.
Yes.
I mean,
Please bear in mind the fact that nobody will hear you at home. We'll come to you in a moment, okay? Right. Bringing you into the picture here, Michael. I mean, from your
law jurisdiction here in the US and across the world in common law jurisdictions, we trust 12 people every day, 12 normal people plucked from all sorts of areas of society to make decisions about murders, rapes, whatever crime it might be. And they make these very fundamental decisions, and we trust them to do it. But they've obviously removed from us the grand jury, or tried to remove it and abolishing it in the 1930s. I think it's very pivotal that we bring it back. And this Tuesday in London, there's actually the synchronicity of it. There's a conference in London being hosted by Michael Mansfield QC, who I'm sure everyone knows, and they're talking about precisely this subject, about the power of people's panels, and throughout the world. Recently we've had Hillsborough panel, which after the sort of the cover up in Hillsborough, those 96 dead who has been covered up, the Hillsborough panel of various different people were able to get to the truth and start to uncover that. We've got another one which is the Daniel Morgan murder case, another panel which is having big problems at the moment with the Metropolitan Police refusing to disclose evidence to the panel. But I think it's something we absolutely, I mean, private prosecution is what I've sort of tried to pioneer, but the sort of key to it is the grand jury, which starts off prosecutions. If 12 people are saying that on the evidence that they see that this should progress to trial, why shouldn't it? If the same 12 people could convict you and send you to jail, surely 12 people can instigate the process. And I think grand juries is a real protection for the people from a rogue state. And I think it's today showed that the people who went into those juries took that as a very sort of their civic duty, very, very seriously, very seriously. There's no messing about, and they were obviously looking at the procedure, the evidence they were presented to come to the correct decision in their view as to whether there was a case to answer. I think it was an excellent exercise, and it's going to be really interesting to see on the next stage how they're going to refuse to actually take these things forward.
Yes. Indeed. Good stuff. Good stuff. Right, now is the time where Daisy will get up and walk amongst you and take some questions. But while she's getting in place, in terms of what we've seen here today, the fact that one of the four didn't reach a resolution shows that this was all about doing it the proper way. Not letting it sort of be seen as some sort of stitch-up or whatever interpretation any mainstream sources are going to try and put on it by saying, oh well, they had four and all four came out 12-0. But that didn't happen.
I mean, that's what they do in their magistrates' courts in this country, 97% conviction rate. You got to wonder why. Why is there a 97% conviction rate in a magistrates' court? Well, I know why, because most of the magistrates' courts are police courts. They've got compliant magistrates who refuse to do what that person did today, which was to, decide, I'm not going with everybody else or whatever. Yeah, so we've got 97% conviction rate in their magistrates' courts, but here we had 25% failure rate.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds good to me, that they applied themselves properly to the job that they had to do.
And on procedural issues.
Yes.
We weren't just talking about, they were just saying, look, we're going to go with everything, I mean, it was a procedural matter. So, I mean, to me, I was very valiant of the guy to do what he did, because at the end of the day, he wasn't prepared to put his name and his honour on an issue that he wasn't comfortable, that another member of the jury who wasn't, able to necessarily comprehend the way he had. So the whole procedure was so no, to me, I applaud them, and I think that was a wonderful thing to do. It was nothing to do with evidence, to do procedure. Again, process and procedure. If there's no process, no procedure, there's no court.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's the same brush. So
effectively, if we're on good, solid foundations, then we expect them to do similar.
Exactly.
Just over dinner I had a conversation with someone who said that he refused to take the oath when he was in court, and his compromise, which he suggested, was, tell you what, I'll swear or affirm just as soon as you guys do it. You go first, and then I'll swear or affirm afterwards. Interestingly enough, that didn't go ahead.
I think, Guy, you tried to get the prosecution CPS into the dock to swear on oath.
Yeah, no, I've done that. Yeah, I've done that with CPS.
I mean, the usual excuse given is that officers of the court and interpreters indeed have a permanent oath on file. But that's not good enough.
Yeah, but if they're trying to, I mean, with what Michael said, the CPS were trying to use fraudulent documents, which I could prove are fraudulent documents, because on another case, the judge in another case, when I took a private prosecution, accepted they were fraudulent and initiated a prosecution against the bailiff based on the fraudulent document. The CPS tried to use that same document against me in a criminal trial, So I said I will arrest the CPS at this point, unless they get in the box. Yeah. So we had But I mean, yes, no, exactly. And this is where we are with these people. If they're trying to use fraudulent instruments to convict us of criminal offences, then obviously, let's hold them to account the same as they're holding us.
Put their feet to the fire.
Yeah, big
definitely,
time.
definitely. Right, Daisy is over there, so let's get underway with views from our audience.
We've got our lovely guest speaker, Field. He's going to ask a question or a statement, maybe.
A very brief statement from the United States of America. Excuse me, question. We don't know much about your politics, but is it true, Alex? I'll start with Alex. Is it true, Alex, that there's an upcoming election?
It's true. It's planned for the first Thursday in May.
Okay, I'm not familiar with the next gentleman in the gray, but I have a question about a fellow named Boris Johnson. Is there such a guy in politics?
Is there such a guy in politics?
Yes.
Boris Johnson.
As Boris Johnson, there's this gentleman, I don't know if I can call him a gentleman, he's quite odious. He's the current mayor of London. He was the MP for, I think it was Henley,
yes.
And then there's a bit of some things going on and he sort of wasn't the MP anymore. But then the people of London forgot all about that and elected him in as the mayor of London. And he promised that when he was going to be mayor of London, he wouldn't do 2 jobs. And now he's going to try and stand to be an MP. So this is a chap who can't keep his promises.
I have just 2 more questions very quickly. Is he from Uxbridge?
Field, we don't...
Town.
Can I just say something, right? Let's take the floppy-haired, Boris Johnson off, not the 9 o'clock news or whatever he's on. No, was it? He's on the.
Have I got
news for you?
Yep.
Right? Let's take that image out of your head.
Yes.
And put him in an SS uniform. Yes. Jack booted up, right? Fits the bill. I mean, really and truthfully, that's what you've got.
As the public school boy on the panel, I can say I know all the tricks and all the affable front that he puts on, and I know how it's developed. There's nothing behind it.
That's right.
But and for your worldwide listeners and other listeners, Google this man's a thug. And most people don't know this, haven't heard this tape. Just go and listen to it. He was trying to organise to give him a few cracked ribs and a few black eyes, and Boris was very concerned that he wouldn't get caught out if he had provided over the details for this journalist that they wanted to beat up.
Crazy.
Boarding school tricks.
Yeah, nothing more than they would have got on a rugby pitch, eh? Darren Eldridge.
Can I just say, no one bought...
The question for me is that now that we've gone through the procedure of the grand jury, and we've all discussed it, and we're talking about it now, appeared in any one of these things, I've been very interested in all this for quite a long time. It's the first time I've gathered the strength to come to one of these things. So I'd really like to know what the panel think.
First of all credit to you for plucking up the courage to come and for coming all the way from Cumbria. If I may, I'll start with the last element of the question. Who do we have to watch out for to block it? And the answer is, at the top of the tree, the Attorney General, taking it through the courts. Short of that, the man who's going to move it forward, who's deliberately not sitting on this panel this evening, so for the sake of propriety, judicially, he is going to move it, first of all, through lower courts, and he may find his access to the appropriate people blocked along the way. And the figures you have to look out for, as always, are the permanent background figures who are employees of the system, not the appointed people who are presiding over it. Clerks of the county courts, you can talk about this in a moment, Guy, are the figures who are more powerful than the magistrates and judges at county court and Crown Court level even. And the same with the councils, by the way. If you take an allegation of a cover-up to a council, you don't have to look out for the councillors or their elected leader of the council so much. You have to look out for the chief executive of the council, who are on those fat cat salaries who get up to all kinds of mischief, the permanent roles. A kind of tail end to my question, really, is that the role that I took on today as a volunteer is one that we all have to watch like hawks. The role of whether you call it the usher or the jurist of the grand jury, if we take on future cases of this. We must keep focused on the Attorney General acting in the public interest, and a lot of letters to the Attorney General, whoever that might be after May, would not go amiss, because we've heard right through this weekend we need to doggedly pursue figures who are acting in the public interest, who have statutory duties to us, and remind them regularly that we haven't forgotten that we expect them to act in the public interest.
The last time that this nolli prosecutor has been used was in the 1950s. It's very, very rarely used, that the Attorney General will exercise, and it was in a murder case apparently in the 1950s that they stopped the prosecution. There was apparently political undertones to this particular murder, and they stopped it. Okay, so it's a very sparsely used thing. But obviously the other one is that, so if they go down, for example, if this is presented to court, I think it will have to go private prosecution route at first, but the CPS will come along. Yeah, the Director of Public Prosecutions exercising his powers under Section 6.
Her, it's a Marxist.
Oh, her, yeah, Alison Saunders.
Yeah.
Yes, I must remember. So Alison Saunders, exercising her power, one of her underlings, have the power to take over it under the Prosecution of Offenders Act 1986, Section 6. And this says that they're allowed to take over and continue any prosecution. And it's quite interesting that they've, can I use the word bastardised?
That's official.
Bastardised the word continue to mean that they can stop a prosecution, yeah, which is very interesting. Again, the problem is that they've, the jurors today have decided that there is a case to answer for these people, and I think many of these things is a good exercise to go down to do this, to try and see what happens. Now, I can give you terms of length of time, because obviously one of their prime things is to delay things, to delay it as much as possible, and there's lots of shenanigans in the court. I mean, my prosecution, the first one I started in April 2011 in Luton Magistrates Court, it was only coming to trial, I mean, it was set for trial for 5 days on the 15th of September 2014. So, so it took over 3 years in and out of courts, fighting off the Crown Prosecution Service up into the High Court, getting stays. They like to run you around everywhere and see what your mettle is and how far you'll go with these things. The problem is the people have spoken. The people elected, you know, in a true democracy, you know, it's us, the people, who hold the power. We elect our officials, and our officials are supposed to be answerable to us. It seems that the tail is very much wagging the dog these days. They think they're in power, and that, you know, how dare you come into the court seeking justice? You know, get out.
Could I add
get out, pleb.
A brief supplementary answer on timescales. Attorney General, we've both talked about. From now on, the establishment is going to try to keep the tenure of an Attorney General and other ministers as short as possible. I don't know if any of you are aware that the House of Commons has a committee called Political and Constitutional Reform. Did we give them the power to have such a committee? No. But last week, under Graham Allen, Nottingham North MP, interestingly enough, we know a lot about Nottingham, Graham Allen, who's not involved directly in those accusations, as chairman of the committee, put a number of questions to constitutional experts about the validity of Parliament and the length of a government within a Parliament. And the primed witnesses, constitutional experts in academia who came to the committee, who were chosen because they were going to say this to the MPs, said, we recommend, you can watch it online, it's available from last week, we recommend that from now on you separate the idea of Parliament and government. Parliament will be elected every 5 years in a paper exercise, and within each 5-year fixed Parliament, which is an un-English, uncommon law concept, by the way, which has been brought in 2011, we'll have a coalition agreement in secret. That may go on for a couple of years, then they'll have a bust-up, then they'll have a recoalescence of the parties without consulting the electors. So you could have a Labour Attorney General for the first year and a half of next Parliament, you could have a Tory Attorney General for the middle third of Parliament, and you could have a Lib Dem Attorney General for the last part of the Parliament.
To be fair, there isn't much difference between them.
No.
They're all following the same agenda.
But if I can say this, right, shamans in the rainforest, or shamans, say it's all about experience, it's experience, right? So what we've done today, okay, we've created an act and an experience, right? And I'm very keen on saying that if you want to learn something, so if you want to learn tennis, you've got to expect the ball to come back over the net now and again, right? So what we've done is we've batted the ball into their area. Let's see what happens, right, okay? And let's see how they deal with it, and then they'll have to deal with the likes of us, and let's get on with it. You know what I mean? We've batted the ball over the net, so let's get on with it.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Where's Daisy got?
I'm here. Any other questions? Oh, yes. I feel like Annika Rice.
We're filling up rapidly, which is good.
In the panel's view, has the general public got anything to fear from the security services, both 5 and 6?
Have we got anything to fear from the security
Well,
services?
only fear itself.
I'll say no, and you didn't mention the other one, the Q, and that was the one I was in for 8 years, and we haven't got anything to fear from them because I knew nothing but good people, possibly misdirected in the 8 years I was in Cheltenham, but really the targets they're set to pursue, as far as I could see, are legitimate, possibly sometimes bogus, but there's no one in the services that really wants to pursue the average British person or British people at all. What we do need to fear is the growing number of private consultancies. In the United States, you have a lot more of this as well, who are hired in the name of or around the side of the duly appointed agencies who can make people's lives hell, who have got no legal standing at all.
I concur. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I imagine we're talking of the likes of Sodexo, on
Yes.
the possibility on that.
Well, we had a presentation yesterday, didn't we, about one of these guys who said, I've been hired by the Secret Intelligence Service, and that was a valid contract as far as we can see, and we're going to make your life hell like never before. And the director of the company called the
Ian
guy.
Puddock.
Yes, yeah, Ian Puddock, thank you.
So it's almost these these private companies are being bought in almost to do do the dirty
Well,
work.
I mean, we ex-spooks like to think we're a special breed, but we're going to be made extinct just like the policemen and every other branch of public service if we don't look out, and replaced by private companies.
And it's already starting.
Yeah.
Big time. And obviously, sometimes these private companies are calling in favours within the public resource of the police on the promise that they'll be getting jobs following retirement in these private companies. So,
and look, I could walk out of here now and have an heart attack and drop dead, right? So someone's out there to assassinate me because that's why I tell everybody everything I know, right? And the more you tell people, the more you get. It's a weird thing, yeah. You know, when you're in business, right, you hold your cards pretty close to your chest because I mean that's where you make your money, yeah.
Yeah.
But in this game, the truth game, the more you give out, the more you sort of get, and the more. And so at the end of the day, if I could die of an heart attack outside the door. So if someone's out there with a rifle, I can't stop them. But I mean, I'm not going to live under tyranny, under terrorism. You know what I mean? Which is what we're dealing with. You know, we're dealing with tyranny and terrorism. So if they want that, bring it on. I mean, I
think the thing from 300 is I'd rather live on my feet than die on my knees. Is pretty apt.
Yeah.
You can choose to live under slavery.
Right, do we have another question?
Everyone's really quiet.
No, it's Sunday night, that's what it is.
Oh, I think we've got Reiki going on in the back of the room.
Oh, I say. There's Reiki skills aplenty.
I think you're going to have to talk amongst yourselves.
Oh, we'll talk about
Daisy, have you not got a question?
No, I've got no questions.
Come on.
No, I think we have a hand up there. So while you're getting
Good,
over your field
again, excellent.
If I basically sort of ask
field
the
marshal.
question, it's been a very moving weekend in a lot of ways, as Brian Gerrish said in his winding up there, just before dinner. Was there anything in particular that struck a real chord with you that you heard over the weekend?
I think pretty much every speaker, including myself, talks about this journey being one of a spiritual nature. Yeah? I'm a really normal guy, not really into all of that stuff, but far more sure of a faith, spiritual journey on this. I think, look, you're saying about the secret services, look, if we've got a problem with them, we've got a problem with the police. All I want is an honest, accountable world to live in. Is it too much to ask? They try and suggest by trying to hold the police to account that I hate the police. I don't hate the police. I hate corrupt police. Yes. I hate a man who would put on a uniform, swear an oath to uphold the law, protect the freedoms and interests of people and their property, and then will go out and abuse that power that he's been given. I abhor that, and I think that most people do. And I think even decent, good cops also secretly envy me. Because I don't have a master like they do. But anyway,
I think
not they have a master.
I think one of the most powerful things I've ever seen in YouTube clips is where you've got the people absolutely shouting at the police,
yes,
do your job.
Yes.
And it's sort of like, There's almost a confusion.
You know what? It's not a job. It's a vocation.
Yeah.
Should people have lost the idea of like doctors and those types of professions being vocations? Yeah. It's all got into the material world where, you know, it's got to make as much money. We've got GPs on 6-figure salaries. You know, not 15 years ago, they were on about 45, good wage, good respected members of the community. Now they're on 6-figure salaries. And if you've been to your GP lately, he's the gatekeeper to the NHS, and I'm sure you have a lot of difficulty getting past him even if you're on your deathbed. Yeah, because they'll pay them a lot of money just to keep you out of the NHS.
But it's called bleed out, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. We might all be working for the mafia, not realise it. The mafia own your shop, right? And you don't know, right? And it's called bleed out. So what actually happens is you have a contained group of people all learning. Yeah, we've got a secret group here, and no one else outside of us knows, right? And then we all start engaging in some sort of corporate or commercial enterprise, and it gets leaked out what we're doing, that there's a secret group. So what we do, like with doctors, the vaccines and all the rest of it, you have to buy them off, so give them good wages, and then fill them full of nonsense, and because we've bled out into our little secret core group has bled out into the public. So you have to cover the bleeding out, not by moral position, with coin, and whose coin is it? It's our coin. And that's what's happened, and that's why you've got, look, this is what Mr. Ebert says about all the time. It's culture. Most people don't think they're criminals, but they're in a culture. The culture has brought all this on. That's the way it is. And I said earlier, and I made a mistake earlier, I was talking about standard requirements and standard procedure. When people say, oh, that's standard procedure, that's where the fault lies. Standard requirements is something completely different, And so what's happened is they've bled out so much because they're so corrupt now that we can't trust nothing.
But we're using that technique back against them, aren't we? Because common purpose, I mean, you just mentioned most people who work for a mafia outfit aren't aware of what they're doing, right? Common purpose set out with that deliberate aim. The hierarchy, as with Freemasons and other groups, knew that they were spreading evil and what the name of it was. But then they trained a mindset which filtered out in rapid time through the whole of the public service. We're starting, you might call it a meme, a cultural idea, recovering our Anglo-Saxon heritage of the grand jury. And most of the people who, God willing, will follow us in this idea will have no connection with us and might not even know the names of the people who've been involved. But we can spread that idea back into society.
Fair play.
Okay.
Well, that common purpose organisation, which again comes back to the authority, and it says about acting beyond your authority. That's on their strapline. You know, no one should act beyond their authority, because if they do, they're ultra-virus, they're acting beyond outside the law that protects them.
And they're operating in their own.
They're actually advertising that that's what they intend to do, and how they obviously do it is they create little leaders in different groups, and if you're in the council and I'm in the police and you need a police job done, I'm your mate over in common purpose. You can act beyond your authority through me with my connections.
And that makes you personally liable.
So and that's what they're doing.
But I mean, these guys are unknowing about this, and they think that they're allowed to do that. So they operate outside the boundaries afforded them by the legislation to their role, thinking that that's what they're entitled to.
Because that's what they've been trained.
They've
been trained that they can actually do something which, if you take a step back and look at it, is complete gibberish. And that's the problem with it. I'm probably going to find out that gibberish means something completely different. I'll see if it's in the dictionary while we talk to Daisy.
Alex, may I make a suggestion? As Field has more energy than half of this room, can we get him on stage? Because obviously he's our...
Go on, Field!
He's our US brother, and he has some knowledge on grand juries and Sodexo too. So just head straight there.
Can I ask him a question?
You may. Here or there?
Here, and then if I get the right answer, I'll go join them.
Oh, you're the prize. Okay.
Well, this question's for you, Alex. We are a common people divided. We are a people divided by a common language. Because and my pronunciation, and my hearing is American, and your speech is UK. Sodexo, is that spelled S-O-D-E-X-O?
Yeah,
it's French.
Okay, then for Alex, the prisons. Does Sodexo have a relationship to the prisons?
Basically, they run the Peterborough prison. They're a private company, basically being paid to run the Peterborough prison service.
Well, thank you. The reason I'm asking is because I've been sent over by some people that are reservists and retirees of the U.S. military, and we're concerned about Sodexo because they've been supplying foodstuffs to the U.S. military in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I'm fairly conservative, and if Sodexo, is that a French company or British?
French.
French, yeah.
French?
Yes.
My concern as a 26-year military veteran is if somebody wanted to undermine the U.S. military, what better way than food? And my last question is, has there been a tagging issue with Serco?
Yes, they were charging for tags, electronic tags, of people that didn't exist.
Well, if you'd accept me, I'd like to come join you.
Yeah.
Can I swap with him?
I don't think Field has been on 2 consecutive editions of Doomwatch since Beyond the Edge days, but there we go. Oh, we're calling the substitute. I see what is occurring.
No, he's just getting a drink. He's coming back.
Quite right. That's what it is. Quite right indeed. Right, we've had a few more people come in. Hopefully there's a question amongst them.
I did see a hand up somewhere, and now it's disappeared.
Yeah. There it is, behind you. Behind you.
He's behind you.
It's Panto season. Did we ever get any cameramen?
It's sort of a question, sort of you know, summation really, stuff that's going out there. Guy, you mentioned about going out there and putting it out, and what I've done in Birmingham, and Mark Solano, I've heard about him sending the letters back. What I've done is a bit of Darren Diochi. I just don't want to engage anymore. So the brown envelope goes back, just pasted back. I don't even send anything to it, just no joinder, no service. But going back to the solicitors, as you say, the big mortgage fraud. In Birmingham, I just go around the solicitors, People's Public Trust, walk in, ask for all the directors, don't say anything, and just say, oh, do you know that since 1989 every mortgage has been fraudulent, we're doing an investigation, just walk off and go into another one. I've done about 20 odd now, but as Simon Spaniard says, if you know another solicitor is doing the dirty, they're duty bound to investigate, aren't they? So they're talking amongst themselves. I don't know whether there's any effect or not. So it's sort of a question and a sort of a thing for people to do, because it empowers you as well. You're not going in there risking anything. No, you're not going to get any letters, but you just go in there and let them know and give them some leaflets and you know, see what happens. Just let them think.
Yeah. Hey, well, I mean, Darren, I know Darren well, and Darren was living at one of our properties for a couple of years, and Darren was very, very good and very insightful what he does. And so on a couple of occasions when I went to the police station and went to the court, I would take Darren with me. He'd put a big badge around with a photograph on him and say, People's Public Trust. He'd sit there, and of course, when you went into the circumstances and where there were public officials, and you said that this man is logging everything to make sure that the public are trusting the officials in this matter, so he's going to be recording everything, they do behave differently. So yeah, and I mean, but what we've got to look at is again, I've said before, I mean, it's a complicated issue, but professional indemnity. We're all responsible for our own actions. If we're operating in a professional capacity, then we take out a thing called professional indemnity insurance. So if you've got someone taking an action against you, they don't come against you, they send a lawyer. Now that lawyer has to be professionally indemnified. So if you have a claim against their client for £2 million and they're becoming engaged in it, then ultimately it's their duty, their obligation to inform their indemnifiers that there is possibly a claim against them, circumstances that may give rise to a claim, in the sum of £2 million. Well, of course, if they're only going to earn a couple of £1,000 off the job, they ain't going to do it. So it's a bit like this, and this is the way I explain it. If you were in Tesco's car park, and for some reason, every time you went there for the last 4 weeks, someone's rear-ended your car, right? Ain't your fault, someone's drove it the back of you. You have to inform your insurance of that, don't you? Now, it's not your fault. Some of the bloody idiots driven into you for the last 4 weeks. But your insurance will go through the roof next time, and the reason it'll go through the roof because the insurance company will say you're a magnet for accidents. And so what you do is you have to play these guys out of the game, right? They're the first line of attack against you. But like I say, what Darren's done, you know, and I mean, you know, I know Darren well, it's very valid, you know, and very valid. I've had Darren sat on a police interview with me for 3 or 4 hours with just a card around his neck with a photograph saying the People's Public Trust. That's all he said, and I told the police that he was there monitoring public behaviour and public officials' behaviour, and they behave the whole way through. So yeah, it's very, very valid. And I mean, yeah, let's look after each other. That's what it's all about. Yeah, and I mean, we've got the power. And like I was saying earlier, 12 people can send one person to jail for life for misconduct in public office. Just misconduct in public office, you get lifed off. So 12 to 1. So when you've got, like on Tom's case, you've got 500 people. How many jurors?
Now this is Tom Crawford.
Tom Crawford, yeah.
And this is very quickly. This is the story of someone who had their mortgage changed by the company giving out the mortgage from being sort of capital and interest, so that over a period of time it would eventually pay off the mortgage, to an interest only, which basically meant at the end of the mortgage you still owed exactly the same as you started.
And I mean, Tom's gone home now, but I mean, Tom will tell you straight, that once the mainstream media got hold of that, they kept saying about him being a cancer patient, and Tom had been a cancer patient. Tom had prostate cancer, right?
Yeah.
That wasn't the issue. You know, Salonta, everyone who was there knew about the fraudulent documents and the fraudulent nature of what was going on. But nobody was interested in that. All they could sell it as was, oh, we've all come to help a cancer patient. No, we've all come. He has got cancer, but we're coming there because they're trying to rip him off. Yeah. And that was why we were all there.
And it was. This has happened twice, isn't it?
Twice.
It was about what, 300 in the first round.
300 in the first one, and it was 6, 7, 8, and I couldn't count the second one. It was enormous numbers.
And there'll be more next time, should it?
Oh, listen.
Yeah.
You know, there will be enormous numbers. I mean, we would talk about thousands next time, right? And all I do when I sit on these things is I'm there to inspect the paperwork, because I'm being trained in legal forensics. So if they give me their paperwork, if they come with the correct statutory instrument, if they want to come and take a property or take a car or take any goods, I can't go and take anything without having a statutory instrument. And if they come to me with the correct statutory instrument, then here's the keys. Here you go.
Should we bring in a US angle on this? Because a couple of months ago, one of the Wall Street banks, if I'm not mistaken, was taken to town by a district judge for presenting a fake or false instrument in a repossession of a house. You know anything about that?
I know a little bit about that. There's something in the United States called MERS, Mortgage Electronic Registration System. Are you familiar with that?
I've heard the name, yes.
Okay, here's how that developed. Wells Fargo in Vancouver, British Columbia, so we have to scratch our heads, why, if Wells Fargo is a bank in the United States, are they setting these MERS up in Vancouver, British Columbia? The next question is, who did the software and the thinking? The answer to that is Ryan Thomas, who was a very good student of math and some other things in the University of Tennessee system. So the second time we scratch our head is, if Wells Fargo is going to be creating the MERS system, and if they're going to be using Ryan Thomas, why are they not south of the 49th parallel? And then after, well, I don't know when the mortgage problem started, but I did lose a house in it. I'm not crying crocodile tears. I got a much better house today. But I've seen corruption in the courts regarding real estate on 2 occasions in my brief 65 years. And Wells Fargo and Ryan Thomas and MERS is a toxic cocktail that has ruined the lives, didn't ruin mine. It's ruined the lives and it's broken families 10,000, 100,000 over. And it's RICO fraud across an international border. And one of my ambitions, and I may never achieve it, but I know some very big household names of powerful and billionaire type people. And notice for the record, I said nothing about Warren Buffett. Because, but it's strange because Warren Buffett has a relationship to Wells Fargo. And Warren Buffett's judge, who slapped him on the hands to discharge it late on a Friday afternoon when nobody was paying attention, her name is Judge Rosemary M. Collier. And when I had a civil case, 1:08-1600 parentheses RMC, would you guess what the RMC stood for?
Royal Marine Corps in the UK.
Okay, in this case, although I was a Marine, so I'm with you. In this case, it's Judge Rosemary M. Collier. And I'm not criticizing her, but she participated in an aggravated fraud upon the court with my case. She didn't know the subject matter, and the other parties, I was the plaintiff, the defense didn't share the truth with her, and she and I will be seeing each other again. But in the meantime, I'm very reluctant to mention the name Warren Buffett in public.
I've just basically taken some feedback, miracles of modern technology, and it appears to some of the audience at home, we've jumped a couple of steps in our explanations of what's been happening over the weekend. So we need actually just to very quickly go back to a Reader's Digest version of the brass tacks on grand juries.
Yes.
In effect, what is a grand jury and why has it been needed to be actioned here this weekend? Why has it been needed?
Well, the short answer is it needs to be constituted because our duly elected and appointed public officials have not been doing their jobs for at least 50, if not 100 years. Now, a grand jury is the first stage in the legal protections that we have, and it's basically there as a large group of good men and true to stop frivolous and vexatious litigation going through.
Right.
It's actually to minimise the number of trials. So if we get accused after this weekend of trying to clog up the legal system vexatiously, remember that. A grand jury is there to say, case to answer, no merit.
Yeah.
So that as a gatekeeper, they prevent the government or any nasties in society from taking us to trial because, of course, a jury can deprive us of our liberty or even our life. So a grand jury is between 12 and 23 people. Why 23? Because if you have 24, then 12 and 12 will mean that there is no majority of 12. 12 you need to convict you, yes? Whereas 12 plus 11 against is still found guilty by 12 or moved forward in the stage by 12. A grand jury will hear one side of the evidence only. That's quite proper. It's a lower evidentiary standard than the petty jury of 12, or in Scotland 15, that actually convict or throw out the case at that stage. The grand jury hears only one side of the evidence, and that is called the incriminatory evidence. There seems to be a case to answer because he or she did and said this, contrary to such and such provisions of common or statute law. Now, only at the stage where the grand jury said yes, it appears prima facie that there's a case to answer, does another sworn jury of 12 or 15, the petty jury, look at the exculpatory evidence, which is supposed to be gathered by the prosecutor as well as by the defence in the interim. It appears that he or she may not have done it because of these circumstances or such and such mitigating factors. So the grand jury is a gatekeeper. It's the beginning of the legal system's protections that we have in common law, and it was taken out of the running in 1933. But like everything in common law, it cannot go away. It can only be suspended.
Right. So we're basically resurrecting something which has fallen out of common usage, but it's still a valid mechanism.
Yes.
And we are doing it this weekend because those who should be doing it are being remiss in their duty.
Yes, but all four of the cases that were presented were, I had a wrong done to me, I went to the lawful authorities and said, hear my case, and I was told to shove it.
Yeah.
Right.
And if I can just say, right, okay, what Alex is saying is, but it's a case to answer. So then this was the situation. And I'll give this example, and I've given it to a couple of people tonight about this outside, yeah? I'm arrested for a murder, and there's a knife found in my bin outside my house with my fingerprints on it and blood of the murder victim. And I'm arrested, and I say, I retain my rights, I'm not going to say nothing. So I'm held in custody. The magistrate, as a summary examination of that, would hold me in custody, saying, well, look, there's been, you know what I mean, yeah? And we're going to set a trial date, right? I've not offered no evidence. Now, they wouldn't say I'm guilty, they'd say there is a case to answer. There are my fingerprints, it's in my bin, there's the blood, etc. When it gets to trial, it's found that maybe I'm slightly, a backward person. I don't know what I'm doing, so I don't say anything, okay, as is my right. When it comes to trial, it gets discovered that I was in Australia when the murder was committed.
Yeah.
And the reason it was the knife was because someone had broken into my house, stolen a knife and killed somebody. Now, at that point, people have said to me, well, they're concerned that you've been wrongly prosecuted. No, because there was a case to answer. Doesn't mean I was guilty, but there was a case to answer, okay? And I was given the right to explain my position. And so that's where we are with that, yeah? There is a case to answer, but if you were found not guilty, because you obviously didn't do it, because the DNA then proves that someone else did it, there was still a case to answer, yeah? So there is no problem with that. It's absolutely spot on in law, yeah? And I mean, my understanding of the perspective of a grand jury is in Al Capone sort of times, yeah? You might have, Al Capone had the mayor and the police chief and all them in his back pocket, and he wants your property, right? Okay, and he's putting every force against you. And you, Christ, you know what I mean? I've got everything against me. You know, I've got the entire state of Chicago or whatever against me and everything else, right? My understanding, and I don't, you know, again, I'm not an expert on this subject, because it's John and Alex's subject, but you could go to a grand jury and explain your position. And they've charged me with an offence, because they're trying to get me out of the game. So I go to the grand jury and I explain, and the grand jury say, hang on, this is a scam. You know, it's actually balancing the scales of what's going on around us. And we haven't got that in this country. All we've got is we've got statutory elements that are continually prosecuting us, and they're all operating outside the boundaries afforded by legislation in a culture which is allowing them to do that. So I mean, yeah.
Opening it up to the US again, the United States is the only country in the world which still has grand juries in daily operation. Now, perhaps you could say something, Field, about why the Americans uniquely and rightly have preserved the grand jury, and also what kind of people and forces are trying to remove the grand jury from US legal practice, and why they're motivated to remove the grand jury.
My guess, and I didn't anticipate this question, my guess is the Bar Association and the judges would like to get rid of the grand jury, because the grand jury puts the power in our hands.
Yes.
And if they get rid of the grand juries, the power goes to them, so they can be even more corrupt than they are. And that's not an offhand statement. I've been corruptly dealt with 2 or 3 times, 2 for sure. And I'm not singing the blues, because see, what they're doing is they're walking themselves into my trap. And what they think as a club or a culture, they think they've got me in their trap. They don't, they won't, and they're going to see me again. One question, in the United States, I heard that you guys have not had grand juries since '33. I think the last runaway grand jury in the U.S. was 1928. I find it remarkable that
Let's just define that, by the way. That's a group of people like us this evening who get together. I don't want to interrupt much longer, but we got together without anyone in the legal system professionally telling us that we ought to meet or to be sworn in or to have anything to do with this case. We, as freeborn English and Welsh men and women, did that. And the Scots and every other English-speaking nation have this right, whether their government tells them they have it or not. That's their birthright. And we got together and found that there was prima facie evidence in 3 of the 4 cases in the upjoys to take that further. You see? So that's a so-called runaway grand jury. It wasn't called by any party to the case.
And there's one, if I understand it, there's one more significant difference, and I'll defer to you because I'm not in the law profession, nor would I want to be. But a runaway grand jury will not have a prosecutor. Is that right?
I believe so, yes.
I believe so too. Yes. So you're taking the government right out of the legal process.
Yep.
And the only reason any American would want to do that is because the government, through the legal process, has abused a vast majority of the people that come into their courts. So
to talk about the power of a grand jury, who remembers Kenneth Starr, the Monica Lewinsky era?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. And what was the point of that? The United States people have quite jealously preserved the unique right to impeach their president. No one of the 3 branches of the US government has the power to remove the president from office. The people must do that, and the first step was a grand jury.
Well, the people would like to do that. And for what I said, I'm not a political person, but you may have heard me earlier say that when I went to Punahou School, I was registered as Field McConnell, Protestant, USA citizenship. And this fellow that you're aware of, I won't mention his name because Warren Buffett might be upset if I say, if I say Barry Swatero. Pardon me, boy, you're a big guy.
Hey, that's what all the ladies say, Phil.
Steady, Jonas. Okay, let me rephrase it. Heavy.
I'm Irish.
There's the US-UK special relationship right there on stage.
Right there, I just noticed we're all right. We're just past the watershed. So we're all right.
When I say
the watershed.
When I said that, it was not a racist comment, it was not a political comment.
Oh, just to fill in what you said this morning, he had come to school as Barry Sutoro, citizenship, Indonesian, religion, Muslim.
Yes, and even that's confusing because the whole world thinks he was either born in Hawaii or he was born in Kenya.
Yeah.
He was born in neither. He was born at Peace Arch Hospital in White Rock, British Columbia. And when he was born there in 1961, his registration would have been, I think it's, well, probably Canada, but certainly citizen of the UK and colonies.
That's right.
So he's subject to you guys, and you can have him back anytime you want.
People's jury now to bring Obama back.
I served you up, and you missed it.
I'm going to give you one back, Field,
Yes.
because Boris Johnson's
He's an American.
United States,
Swap
and he
you.
wants to be our Prime Minister. What's going on?
We'll swap you.
I don't know what's
You've
going
got
on.
ours, and what's going on?
I don't know, but you know I do some writing.
Yeah.
The reason I ask you guys the question is because, first of all, I don't understand the English, Welsh, North Island accents very well, and that's why I'm talking slowly. But I don't know why both countries, UK and US, are sending our collective effluence across the ocean.
We like our regional accents, Field. And we've got Manek here, who's got a question about tagging.
Oh, tagging.
Hi, Phil. Yeah, I've greatly admired your work over the past few years, and I've followed you down that.
It's working, yeah.
I followed you down that deep hole, you know, and I can't get out of it, you know. So you have all the answers, as it seems. So I'd like to ask you, how can tagging be made a profitable business for outside influences, and how can tagging be profitable and be made into a business for paedophiliacs, and does that go on in this country?
So, basic question, tagging.
Yep.
How can that be made profitable, and what's the links between tagging and paedophilia?
Well, that's a really good question, even though I didn't understand a single word. In the United States, prisoners are tagged too, but sometimes they're let out of prison, and sometimes it's the worst people. The people that are in solitary, they might be let out of prison to do something, and I even hate to bring this up in mixed company, but they might be let out of prison for 12 or 24 hours, and if they'll do the deeds of the government or shadow government, then they will be given enough time to go out and satisfy their lust, whatever it is, before they come back. And the reason they like the ones in solitary the best, nobody sees them go. And they may be let out at 5 p.m. and they're back in there at 5 a.m., but none of the other prisoners have seen that. I want to give you something that may shock you, and this is not about tagging prisoners, but it's my honest belief that on Friday, the 22nd of October of 2014, two people may have been tagged, one of them being Barack Obama and one of them being the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. His name's Martin V. Dempsey. He is guilty. He hasn't been adjudicated. Am I right so far?
I believe so.
Yeah. I don't really get along with the lawyers, but this guy's good. No, he's been guilty of wrongful death. I'm talking about Obama. He is guilty. He hasn't been adjudicated. Wrongful death, 2,200 counts for every man or woman from the U.S. forces that's died in Afghanistan since the 20th of January of 2009. And worse than that, because, and I'm not cutting him any slack, but he's never taken an oath of office. He's never sworn loyalty to the United States. We've been told he did on the first election on the 20th of January of 2009 by statute. This judge told him to put his hand up and repeat after me. He repeated wrongfully. He blew it. And then this judge says, no problem. We can do it later in private. Well, I'm an American citizen. I'm 65. I went to his high school. That's not good enough for me, and it's not good enough for America. And if it was the other side of the ocean, it shouldn't be good enough for you. So that's one problem I've got with him, and I've got multiple. The next time he swore in, which he didn't, by statute, and I don't know much about the law, but you have to swear in on the 20th of January following the year of the election, and on 2013, that day fell on a Sunday.
Yes.
By statute, if the 20th of January is on a weekend, you swear them in on the Monday following the weekend. So what do you think they did? They took the same judge, is it John Roberts?
Yes.
Yeah. They took the same judge, they swore him in private a second time. So for a second time tonight, let me say that for patriotic Americans, that's not good enough. And I have been toying with the idea, and I'll hire you later for about $2. But I'm really contemplating bringing a suit against Barack Obama for wrongful death, 2,200 cases, but I would file the suit against Field McConnell versus Barry Swatero, Punahou 79, and I'd have it served at 1601 Punahou Street, Honolulu, Hawaii, his last known address.
Yeah.
And so, you know, yeah, you can hang around for a while, but if your transgressions are so egregious, sooner or later, God will get you.
Yes. That, by the way, is another reason why we are holding, or have held, the grand juries this weekend. Some may proceed to prosecutions, some may be lawfully thrown out, some may be held in contempt. But it's important that we remind those who appear to be guilty during their period in office, and certainly during their life in this earth, that they will have to answer, first of all, to the people, and secondly, in eternity, to their Creator. And by...
Blimey, what was that? That wasn't me. We have a question from Ceylon.
It's more for the people watching. I just want to know if, because we've had the grand juries here today, were they sworn in under an oath, or did we just gather together and pretend that we were going to go and do this
They were in
process?
panels by me and 3 other ushers under the grand jury oath, the words of which are well known and part of the English Constitution, and as always with the conscience provision that the Quakers began, and other Christian groups who are also represented at this conference agree with that. When Jesus Christ says, I say to you, swear not at all, but let your yes be yes and your no be no, the option was given to say, I do solemnly affirm, instead of I do solemnly swear. But the full form of words was duly used.
Is there anything you don't know, Alex?
Quite a lot.
Right, 1 second. We got a question here, I think. Oh, not anymore? Oh, good, good.
I might as well. Because I'm actually tired now, and I've been up till 4 or 5 in the morning. But I shop, therefore I am. And I believe that, or if I'm right, there's no law that mandates an obligation to pay tax, income tax, or self-assessment tax. And also, with all these delicious bills I'm no longer paying because of this saint, I no longer need credit, and I am going to challenge this month. It's not going to be a challenge. I'm going to serve a cease and desist note to all the credit rating agencies who are trading for profit on my name, and I'm going to send them a bill for any incident that they have actually got on their list of my name over the months, and anything that's adverse, I'm going to be charging them £1 million.
Aliens, they're eating our spuds or whatever, right? Okay, alien, an illegal alien, a space alien. They're all something down here taking our goods, yeah. And so what I did years ago, you know, again we're madly going around, but what I did was that I found when my dad died, I found that British Gas and Npower had both charged for 5 years electricity on a property, and so. How can they do that? They've done it by direct debit. My dad had paid it direct debit. So, understanding liens, as it were, when my dad died, I took it, because I'm useless in my hands, I can't do nothing, manual labour. So, I took over like the lawyer job in my world, and me and Linda. And what I did was, I thought, British Gas and Npower, both are claiming, they both had 20 grand off us. So, I ultimately got back to the contract and found that Npower were the ones who didn't have a contract. Trying to get 20 grand off Npower, nightmare, right? Just goes round in circles. And you contact someone, yes, we're dealing with it, and then 2 weeks later they move to another department. So what I did ultimately, I thought I'm not going to pay any Npower bills on any of our properties that have got Npower. So what happens then is you get a human rights notification. We're going to switch the electric off in this property because you're not paying a bill. So I went down, this was about 2007 or 8, I went down the court. I said, well, there's a court case with my name on it. Yeah? And back in those days, they didn't really know the score. So I went down there and I said, I demand redress. They said, oh no, ring this number and pay the bill. I said, no, I don't owe the bill, right? So anyway, ultimately I got in front of the magistrates and they said, he owes 600 quid, we want to cut the electric off. So I said, well, I can prove they owe me £20,000 and I've got evidence here to support what I'm saying. Of course, magistrates sat there, it's a rubber stamping exercise, you know, except for me. And they said to NPower, well, they said, oh, we don't know anything about this. They said, well, okay, well, let's adjourn it for a month and come back and support your case. So, of course, we adjourned for a month. We're not going to cut his electric off for a month. We went back a month later. And, of course, they sent a geezer who didn't, the bailiff said, oh, I know nothing about it again. So I won the case. So, basically, on that basis, they said, you can't cut them off. You cannot cut them off. So, of course, they owed me 20 grand and I owed them 600. But, of course, it's 8% interest in commercial rates. So they owed me 8% interest on all that. So they took me back to court 14 times, in which case, and I threatened to arrest the judge and I threatened to arrest the 3 magistrates for continuing in these actions. But, I mean, the clerk of the court, I mean, there's tape recordings of this on the internet, the clerk of the court understood, you can't keep bringing this case back. But what I'm saying is, I enforced a lien. Because if you owe me something, if Alex stole my microphone, I could steal his. I say, I'm not going to give you this back when you give me yours back.
That's not theft.
That's right, it's not theft, it's a lien. Yeah, and I'm holding that as a hostage until you pay me back. Simple. If you've got it in paper format, so you've got it in chronological paper format that I've been writing to Alex and he's not been responding and all the rest of it, then it just firms up your position. And that's exactly what I did. So we've never had an NPower bill on them properties since, well, 2007, so in 8 years. But they still owe me money.
Speaking of electricity, I don't know if there's anyone here who lives off the grid. You may be interested to know that a trend coming from America, the state of Florida has just required everyone to be connected to the electricity grid. You have anything to say about that?
Yes, I do. I don't know if Brian Garish is still here. If you are, could you wave? Because we had a conversation. I don't see an arm.
I think Brian's having a well-deserved drink.
Yeah.
He's gone?
He's just having a drink.
Oh, good. I'd like to join him.
Yeah.
But I won't.
Won't be long.
Yeah. But I'm involved in a process where like 2 guys here, this person owns a very expensive ranch in Texas.
Oh, do I?
No, you're playing that part, just like you do in court.
I got £250 million to spare.
Yep, you've been listening, and I'm the guy in the middle. This guy has been injured. Excuse me?
Don't worry.
They want some of them for $250 million.
Oh.
But it's all going to be eaten up on the ranch.
Yes.
So
and
I'll give it all to you, don't worry, Phil.
Yeah, I helped you earlier. But anyway, this man's been injured because he's been a target of the court and the medical professionals working in collusion to cause him directed pain, which resulted in severe PTSD. And he's getting a very big sum, which I shouldn't say, because, well, first of all, I don't know how big it is, but it's more than enough to buy this man's ranch. And this man's ranch is going to be turned into a veterans facility where veterans or their surviving family members can come to Texas and have a week in a palatial estate, and it wouldn't cost them anything. Now, I didn't say U.S. veterans. Did you notice that?
I did.
Yeah, because our enemies, I'm speaking for the U.S., which usually involves the U.K., our enemies have been attacked for nothing, and I would invite our enemies to, if they could afford to travel to the U.S. or if somebody would help them, they could come stay too. Can you imagine having 7 bedrooms where you got an Afghanistan survivor, you got an Iraq quadruple amputee, you got a squatty that's had his vision taken away, you got an American who has PTSD, then you get perhaps somebody from some other country who's been attacked by the coalition. Why don't we get a coalition of Christians, Muslims, or other believers, and you don't have to believe like I do, but let's stop shooting at each other just because some bank tells us to, and let's start loving each other.
Can I come to this point about We're talking about grand juries today.
Yes, indeed.
Private prosecutions, constitutional rights. And you just touched on something which is another key ingredient which we seem to have lost in the UK, which is the unfettered jury. So a jury, if a jury in a civil case finds the other party guilty, it's to the jury to decide how much they award that victim. So in that case, you're talking 250 million or whatever it might be, you hear these massive figures in the US. In England, it's limited by personal injury claims. So you might have your life completely trashed, but you might get 10, 20 grand because the judge decides how much you get. The judge who's working for the state.
Yes.
Until we get back to completely unfettered juries in this country in civil proceedings, because we have them in defamation cases, and the defamation case jury is still unfettered to give any amount of money, although on appeal a single judge can reduce that, which makes it a little pointless. However, we should be back. We should be. This is one of the things I love about the United States of America, is you have unfettered juries in terms of civil claims where they can award any amount of money. So it becomes really difficult for the wrongdoer because they actually get severe penalties for whatever it might be. Yeah, do you agree?
Yes, and now we're going into something else.
Similar to us.
I was called to Malaysia last April. I showed up, excuse me, I was called in March. I traveled in April, and I explained to them where their aircraft had gone, Malaysia 370. But before I traveled, I had it in writing, and you can Google it by putting MH370, 29 March, and my name. And I'm not going to repeat my name because it doesn't matter. You may know it, and you can find it. It's not about me. It's about innocent people and God. But I told Malaysia, yes, I'll come down there. But in the meantime, Malaysia as a company and Malaysia Airline System as a corporation need to come up to speed with two items: Boeing uninterruptible autopilot and the ATI, which is an injector that puts calming gas into a cabin. But anyway, I said, if you don't expose this, I'm going to say it verbatim, real slow. If you don't expose the BUAP and the ATI after my visit, you, Malaysia, can look forward to a second explosive event by 1900 hours on the 17th of July. They didn't expose it at 1735 on the 17th of July. Malaysia 17 went down in Ukraine. Did I know that was going to happen? I didn't, but he did.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Priming the media, and in particular, we're talking about Russia Today and Al Jazeera, because we know that these particular broadcasters are quite keen to expose a lot of the behind the scenes, shall we say, of what's happening in the UK.
Well, unlike the Royal Courts of Justice, there's no real camera moment with a grand jury, because they simply say, this is fit to go. This case can proceed. There's no dramatic debut or denouement of the case. That's it. The case is launched or blocked at its outset.
Yeah.
But the legal novelty of it, that a grand jury assembled without being told to in England and Wales, so it's the first time since 33, is something that can be put into a report later. I don't think that that's something necessarily that we can invite RT or Press TV to this evening, because we have to keep cameras away from the deliberations of the jury.
Right.
Does Guy have something to add on that?
Yeah, well I have, because what you've got to look at is juries get paid, right? What we've got here is there's been grand juries, the people have come here, right, done their duty, their civic duty.
Including by refusing in one case.
Including by refusing, right, okay. But they've done that. Not only did they not pay, they probably paid to come into the venue and travelled. So I mean that's proper civic duty. Yeah? I mean, because we're prepared to do that, yeah?
Can I just give the mic to Kaz, otherwise she's going to storm on stage. No, I'm joking.
Right, back to the US. Did you know the US is the only country so far that takes abusers out of the country where they have abused after they've served their sentence, and then retries them and does them on US soil for the same crimes?
So
because they have abused in another country, they then take them back home and retry them.
This is an extension of the extraordinary rendition then.
There are currently less than 100 prisoners in the US serving over 1,000 years for crimes against children in other countries. Why can't other countries do the same?
I'm wondering
what you're saying is about sex tourism. So say somebody goes and abuses a child in Thailand, they get tried in Thailand once they're convicted and done their sentence,
not forgiven.
and brought them to US soil if they're a US citizen, and prosecute them again. I mean, in some ways, double jeopardy comes. I mean, I don't know.
No, it doesn't. Double jeopardy is when there's two lots of people saying the same thing over and over again. New crimes, new trial.
Well, no. If you've been prosecuted, I mean, hear me out. If you've been prosecuted for a crime in one country, convicted, did your sentence, whatever that crime might be, you can't then just be taken to another country and prosecuted again for the same offence, and then put because now your punishment is twice. I mean, take it out of the context of child abuse, which is emotive. Say, for example, I went, quite fancy it, robbed a bank in New York City, got jailed, got caught. I couldn't then come back to England and be jailed again for it. Yeah, fair, you know.
That doesn't come under double jeopardy.
I think the more important thing is the people who are going to Thailand and getting away with it, not being prosecuted in Thailand, not being prosecuted in their own country. And I mean, that is one thing that they have brought into place in the UK, is that you can be prosecuted for crimes against children that you commit in foreign soil, which goes a bit against, if you study law, that, for example, the jurisdiction of the English courts does not extend beyond the boundaries of the geographic country. For example, and the famous thing is that if they make smoking illegal in London, you can't be prosecuted for smoking in France, for example. I mean, things like the Vatican, which has the age for consent is 12. Is it 14?
Raised to 14 now.
It was 12 years old.
Yes, I know it was.
It was 12 years old in the Vatican. So technically, it wouldn't be against the law to abuse young boys or girls under the age of 12 or the age of 12 in Vatican. Yeah. So technically, these people may be doing something like that in the Vatican. They're not committing any crime, and then they move to another jurisdiction and then be prosecuted. In France, I think, is 14?
15.
15 in France. Spain,
14.
15? Yeah.
I
think there's a varying age difference. The rights and wrongs of it are not, well, I mean, we can discuss them. The rights and wrongs of age of consent.
Can I just explain how the US are doing it?
Yeah.
They're not they're not trying them for the original crime. They are trying them for going on holiday for the purpose of that crime.
Okay.
So it's not double jeopardy.
Can I give you another perspective on that? Yeah. I'm not a Bible scholar, and if anybody is, or somebody who was really got a good memory, I think it's Matthew 18:5 says, "He who welcomes a child in my name welcomes me." But if you cause one of these, cause one of these little ones to sin, it would be better if you tied a stone around your neck and you went in the sea.
Yes.
So we support your ideas.
Okay, we've got time for just one very quick question. If there is one, hand straight up in the middle here.
Not really a question as such, but in things like legal aid and I presume civil court, not criminal court, I would like to see a system where people that are prosecuting somebody in a civil court, that you cannot use more assets than the person with the lowest assets.
Yes.
So that if somebody's on £200 a week, the opposition cannot come in with big guns. They can only use £200 worth of assets to do that prosecution, so that there is a fairness and a balance there. And I'd like to see that as a common law, sort of a certainty.
It is a principle in common law. It's called equality of arms.
Equality before the law.
I'd like to see that pursued.
Yes.
Sounds a good point, and that brings us right round to the Field McConnell, Michael Doherty, Guy Taylor, and thank you to all you for being a tremendous audience tonight. all it leaves me to say is, under the radar, around the world, you've been on Doomwatch!